The term nothing special comes from a guy called Shunryu Suzuki. He was a Zen Buddhist who went to the United States, and particularly San Francisco, and set up the San Francisco Zen Center. He's a fairly high-profile figure in the Zen movement, or was. He's dead now. He was a very high-profile figure. And in his book, a beautiful book called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and I could do a whole podcast on the idea of always having a beginner's mind, which maybe I will do at some later point. Anyway, the whole thrust of that book, or one of the main ideas, is that actually there's nothing special about Zen. In fact, there's nothing special about anything. And for people who want something special, who are looking for the next treat or bit of entertainment or thing to excite them, or indeed most people want to be special. They want to be famous or rich or particularly attractive or whatever it is that they think will give them some kind of affirmation in the eyes of other people. So we all want to be special, and I've actually done a previous podcast on the whole thing of being special. People want to be special because they've got nothing within them. They feel empty, so they're looking for something to fill them, and the thing that they would most easily identify as a thing that would fill them would be something special. And so they attempt to borrow specialness, in terms of maybe wearing the most recent fashions, or identifying or associating with somebody who they believe is special or who has some kind of profile in the world. This desire for specialness is a curse, and it takes people away from the ordinary. And the ordinary is beautiful. You don't need anything special. So in seeking the special, we're actually seeking more power. And we're seeking more power because we don't have our own power. If we had our own power, our own sense of self-approval, then we wouldn't go looking for Rolex watches, Gucci handbags, and all the other nonsense that many people spend their life acquiring in actual fact. So, if you want examples of people who self-validate, then you need look no further really than Christopher Hitchens or Nassim Taleb. You may not have heard of Nassim Taleb, but he's a very wealthy guy who writes books. Some of the books he writes are on philosophy, some are on mathematics, and he's a bit of a polymath. And on his website, which I believe is called fooledbyrandomness.com, at one point, I think he's taken it off now, but at one point he says something to the effect of, please don't bother me with your opinions, and I don't need any approval from you because I've got fuck you money. He actually had that on his website. These days he has statements like, don't send me emails, and to the press, messages like, go away, because the press always wants to talk to him because he's a fairly high-profile figure. So this whole thing of specialness comes from this sense of lack. And Nassim Taleb is a special person. Sounds like I'm contradicting myself. He's special in that he doesn't want to be special. He hates it. He's only got himself to blame for writing some very, very good books about the way the world operates. And of course everybody now wants to talk to him and so on. But he hides away. He's a recluse, to a large extent anyway. And Christopher Hitchens, he famously said when somebody asked him where he gets pleasure from life, he said, I get pleasure from crowing over other people's misfortunes. Hitchens was a Spinoza fan, and in Spinoza there's a few lines which basically say most people get their pleasure from other people's misfortunes, which unfortunately is true. But if somebody can get their power by looking at somebody else's misfortune, in other words, they feel more because other people feel less, then that's what people will do. Anyway, the real topic of this podcast is people who would have you believe that they have something special in the domain of religion, spiritual stuff, self-help, all that kind of stuff. And the people who sell that kind of thing have to convince you that they have some powers or some insight that you do not have. So they may be enlightened, whatever that means. They may have some unusual insights, some kind of woo-woo into some knowledge that you don't have. And they may be in contact with spiritual beings, they may be in contact with aliens, anything like this. Anything that would seem to be special and bestow more power upon someone if they could acquire those properties as well. So, the gurus who sell enlightenment are effectively promising that if you can somehow acquire this state, then all your troubles will effectively be over. Well, let me tell you a few things about Shunryu Suzuki, who was, I emphasize he was one of the most highly regarded Zen teachers in the West. And there was an occasion when he fell into a river, a very deep river, and he was drowning because he couldn't swim. And he was rescued, and he said afterwards, "Yes, I was frightened. The whole thing was just an amazing experience. I was terrified. I thought I was dying." And someone asked him if he was enlightened, and his wife just said, who was with him at the time, just said he doesn't know what that word means. And so, over and over and over again, he emphasized this thing of nothing special. Nothing special. He would sit for hours each day just in his Zen position, just observing his breathing. And he said that if he could do that all day, he would do that. Nothing special, but the people who are selling enlightenment are trying to persuade you that if you can achieve the state that they are in, then you will achieve some less painful and more insightful view of the world. And we all want that. That's why we're suckers for it. And then you have the people who sell you some kind of idea that they have special knowledge. Maybe knowledge of, I don't know, the nature of God. Maybe they have special insights into the nature of God. Or maybe they have special insights into the nature of our existence. Anything that might be attractive to people. They have special insights into how we might be happy, the positive thinking charlatans, all those kind of people. And then you come across, the real sort of, the real kind of idiots, the people who are in contact with angels or aliens or spiritual beings of one kind or another, and because they profess to have this power that you do not have, then maybe that attracts you and you go spend money, because most of these things will involve spending money. They're not doing it because they particularly want to help people. They're doing it because it's a business. But we tend to overlook that when the promises are so great. So let me tell you about a more sensible approach to all of this. You are blessed with the one thing that nothing else on this planet has, and that is a rational mind. You can look at the evidence around you and infer certain things from it. And without this ability to be rational, we'd still be in caves, frightened of the lightning, because we think that we would think that lightning and thunder was the anger of the gods or something ridiculous like that. And an interesting fact is that as science pushes back the frontiers of our understanding, so does the point at which we start to say, oh well, this is the mystery of God. So once upon a time, thunder and lightning was a manifestation of God. Maybe various illnesses, a few hundred years ago, would be some punishment by God or something. Now we know that maybe they're viruses or bacteria. So all the time we're pushing back this frontier, this point at which we have to say, oh, this is the work of God. And physicists are, fairly close to understanding that the universe effectively came from a womb of universes, what they call the multiverse. Of course, then you ask the question, well, where does the multiverse come from? And then at that point, somebody says, oh, well, that is the work of God or whatever. So wherever there's ignorance, then people will start to talk about God. Anyway, to get back to the main point, you are blessed with this reason. You don't need any special woo-woo. You really don't need people telling you about enlightenment or special insights into the nature of God or spiritual beings or angels or aliens or anything like that. There's plenty here to fascinate you. If people studied even the popular books on physics, they'd see some truly weird stuff. You might even call it special. The idea that if someone travels very fast relatively to you, then they will shrink in size as far as you're concerned, and that's a real effect. And I could go into how that's a real effect, but I don't want to digress too much. So when we try to understand the world, I think a good place to start, in actual fact, is with philosophy and of course science, the rational pursuits. As far as I know, most philosophies, not all, but most philosophies do not start with some kind of woo-woo. They start with some kind of observation. In fact, I think it was Aristotle who said every philosophy starts with some self-declared foothold. It has to have a foothold somewhere. And then it makes a number of propositions and builds on the whole thing from there. And you get some level of insight from that. And then you can turn to science to get the facts. In my opinion, science is not as rich as philosophy, but even though I trained as a scientist, it's not as rich as philosophy. But even so, the world, the ordinary world, is way, way, way more interesting, for me anyway, than any kind of gobbledygook that someone who is spouting, who is claiming to have some kind of special power. Here's the bottom line. Do not believe that anyone has special powers. I mean, it may be that somebody at one point did have, I don't know. But you're very safe in assuming that the people who are claiming to have special powers don't actually have them. So, nothing special. Luxuriate in the ordinary. Of course, what this means is you have to abandon to some extent ambition, because ambition is always about trying to achieve something special. It means, in some way, trying to moderate your desires for power from the outside. But there's a strange thing. Well, it's not so strange, really. The more active your mind becomes, in terms of reading the great minds, so Schopenhauer or Plato or whoever, maybe read some of the popular books by Richard Feynman. Very entertaining guy. When the mind is active, we start to get some kind of sense of our own inner power. Listening to random gobbledygook is just a state of being inwardly passive. So just luxuriate in the ordinary. The ordinary is special. And of course now, the temptation is, of course, to make the ordinary special. But the ordinary is just ordinary, and the ordinary is beautiful. And personally, I have no real appetite for the special. I quite like the ordinary.